6 months ago, a woman sent a message that stopped me completely. She said she had not eaten over 1,200 calories in 4 months. She was walking 45 minutes every morning. She had cut sugar, alcohol, and bread entirely, and her belly had actually gotten harder and more distended than when she started. She was not lying. She was not cheating. She was doing everything the conventional fitness industry told her to do. And her body was responding by storing more visceral fat, not less. Here is what was actually happening inside her body, and what is likely happening inside yours if you are reading this with the same frustration. Visceral fat does not follow the same rules as regular fat. It is not passive tissue that melts away when you eat less and move more. It is a metabolically active organ with its own hormonal output, its own inflammatory signals, and its own deeply wired survival instructions. When you starve it, you stress the body. When you stress the body, cortisol rises. When cortisol rises, visceral fat cells receive a direct chemical signal to hold on tighter and accumulate more. You cannot fight this tissue with restriction. You have to change the chemistry it lives in. And 5 specific foods contain the exact molecular compounds that do exactly that. One of them activates a fat-burning receptor pathway that mirrors what happens inside your body during a 12-hour fast without skipping a single meal. Let us get into it. The core problem. Before the foods, you need to understand precisely why conventional approaches fail against visceral fat specifically, because the failure is not random, it is biological. Visceral fat is wrapped directly around your liver, pancreas, and intestines with its own dedicated blood supply. It secretes inflammatory proteins called cytokines directly into the portal circulation feeding into your liver. This means the organ responsible for processing and burning fat is continuously bathed in inflammatory signals produced by the very fat it is supposed to be eliminating. The exit door is being blocked from the inside. Additionally, visceral fat cells carry a disproportionately high concentration of cortisol receptors compared to fat cells anywhere else in your body. Your belly is biologically wired to respond to stress signals more aggressively than any other region of your body. Every cortisol surge pulls more circulating energy into deep abdominal storage. You cannot restrict your way around this chemistry. You have to change the conversation your cells are having. These 5 foods do exactly that. Food 1. The inflammation extinguisher. The first layer of the problem is active cellular inflammation. As long as visceral fat tissue is producing inflammatory cytokines, fat cells remain locked in storage mode and insulin receptors stay blocked. No amount of exercise overrides this chemistry. The food is extra virgin olive oil, consumed raw and daily, not cooking oil, cold-pressed, genuine extra virgin. The active compound is a polyphenol called oleocanthal, which inhibits the same inflammatory enzyme pathway as ibuprofen at the molecular level. It directly suppresses NF-κB, the master switch governing cytokine production in your fat tissue. When this switch quiets, the chemical lock on your fat cells begins to release. Oleic acid in olive oil simultaneously triggers a gut hormone called OEA that sends a hardwired signal to your brain to increase fat oxidation and reduce hunger simultaneously. 2 tablespoons daily on salads, drizzled over vegetables, or consumed directly delivers the therapeutic dose. This is not a condiment, it is a molecular intervention. Food 2. The liver restorer. Even with inflammation lowered, visceral fat cannot leave your body if the organ responsible for metabolizing it is congested. All fat oxidation ultimately flows through the liver. When the liver accumulates its own fat deposits, the processing system backs up completely. And in people carrying significant visceral fat, this condition is extraordinarily common. The food is deeply pigmented berries, specifically blueberries. The active compounds are anthocyanins and pterostilbene. These molecules activate a protein inside liver cells called AMPK, the same energy-sensing enzyme triggered by fasting and caloric restriction. When AMPK switches on, liver cells accelerate fat oxidation, clear accumulated lipid deposits, and rebuild insulin sensitivity simultaneously. Clinical research confirms that regular anthocyanin consumption measurably reduces liver fat independent of total caloric intake. 1 cup daily, fresh or frozen, delivers the required dose. Frozen blueberries retain full polyphenol potency and cost a fraction of fresh. Think of this as clearing the drainage system so the fat your body mobilizes has somewhere to actually go. Food 3. The cortisol quieter. You can reduce inflammation and restore liver function, but if your nervous system is locked in a continuous low-grade stress state, your body will replenish those visceral stores as fast as you clear them. Cortisol is the primary architect of the hard belly. Every spike pulls energy out of circulation and locks it around your organs. You need a direct chemical tool for the adrenal stress response. The food is plain fermented dairy, specifically kefir or full-fat plain yogurt with live active cultures. The mechanism works through 2 separate pathways at once. The live bacterial strains in fermented dairy directly support the production of GABA, your brain's primary calming neurotransmitter. Without adequate GABA signaling, the nervous system stays in a state of background anxiety, keeping cortisol trickling continuously into your system around the clock. Simultaneously, the short-chain fatty acids produced during fermentation improve vagus nerve sensitivity. The vagus nerve is the direct communication line between your gut and your brain. An optimally functioning vagus nerve keeps parasympathetic activity dominant, the precise biological state in which your body feels safe enough to release stored energy rather than defend it. 1 cup of plain kefir daily is the protocol, never sweetened or flavored. The added sugar in commercial flavored varieties spikes insulin and cancels the cortisol benefit entirely. Food 4. The glucose sponge. Lowering cortisol removes the storage signal, but if blood sugar is spiking aggressively after every meal, insulin will continue driving energy into visceral storage regardless of every other intervention. You need a physical mechanism inside the gut itself that intercepts glucose before it floods circulation. The food is raw oats prepared cold, specifically overnight oats rather than cooked. The compound responsible is beta-glucan, a viscous soluble fiber that forms a thick gel on contact with liquid in your stomach. This gel physically slows the transit of food through your small intestine, flattening the post-meal glucose curve before the spike can even form. The deeper mechanism happens further downstream. When beta-glucan reaches your colon intact, gut bacteria ferment it and produce butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that functions as a direct cellular signal. Butyrate tells your liver to improve insulin sensitivity. It signals your hypothalamus to reduce appetite. It instructs your mitochondria to increase their fat-burning efficiency. Half a cup of raw oats prepared cold with blueberries delivers both the glucose-flattening fiber and the liver-restoring anthocyanins simultaneously. The protocol naturally stacks itself into a single meal. Food 5. The receptor activator. This final food operates at the deepest level of visceral fat chemistry, targeting the actual receptor machinery inside your cells that determines whether glucose gets stored or burned. The food is Ceylon cinnamon, consumed daily at a consistent dose. The active compound is cinaldehyde. Here is exactly what it does. Cinaldehyde directly stimulates GLUT4 receptor translocation on the surface of muscle cell membranes. GLUT4 is the protein channel that allows glucose to enter muscle cells for energy use without requiring insulin as the key. When GLUT4 is activated, your muscles mechanically pull glucose out of your bloodstream independently.
blood sugar drops, insulin demand drops, and lower insulin means the fat storage signal drops with it across every tissue in your body.
The secondary mechanism is where this becomes genuinely remarkable. Cinnamaldehyde activates a receptor pathway called PPAR-gamma, the same pathway your body uses during extended fasting to shift toward fat oxidation as its primary fuel source. Half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon daily stirred into coffee, mixed into overnight oats, or blended into yogurt provides the clinically meaningful dose. The distinction between Ceylon and cassia cinnamon matters here. Cassia contains high levels of coumarin, which can stress the liver at daily doses. Ceylon is the safe therapeutic variety. This is not a spice. It is a receptor-level metabolic instruction delivered in a quarter teaspoon. The stacked protocol. The real power here is not in any single food. It is in combining them so that each one addresses a different layer of the visceral fat problem simultaneously. A breakfast of cold overnight oats with blueberries and half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon stirred through a cup of plain kefir delivers the glucose sponge, the liver restorer, the receptor activator, and the cortisol quieter in a single sitting. A lunch of leafy greens dressed generously with 2 tablespoons of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil stacks inflammation reduction with fat oxidation signaling before the afternoon even begins. Every component sends a distinct chemical message to a specific biological system. Together, they lower the inflammation, keeping fat cells locked shut. They clear the liver pathway, processing fat out of your body. They calm the stress chemistry, continuously triggering new storage. They flatten the glucose spikes, feeding the insulin response. And they activate the receptor pathways that shift your entire metabolic state toward burning rather than saving. Visceral fat is not evidence of weak willpower. It is a biological response to an inflamed, cortisol-flooded, insulin-resistant internal environment. That environment was created by signals, and it can only be changed by better signals. Extra virgin olive oil to extinguish the inflammation, blueberries to restore the liver, kefir to quiet the cortisol, overnight oats to intercept the glucose, Ceylon cinnamon to activate the fat-burning receptors. Stop subtracting food and start adding data. Your body was never broken. It was simply waiting for the right instructions. Now you have them.